Today we cancel a woman named Jessica Esquivel, PhD. She describes herself as not just a normal physicist, but an Afro-Latinx physicist, which means that her physics are far more inclusive and equitable than regular physics. This is the pitch she makes for herself in her bio on her website, where she describes her professional mission this way. She says, as one of the few Afro-Latinx women to graduate from St. Mary's University with a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering and Applied Physics, and the second to graduate with a PhD in Physics from Syracuse University, Dr. Esquivel understands traversing spaces as the only and has a very personal recognition of the importance of equity, diversity, and inclusion. She traverses spaces as the only. I could not possibly come up with a better way to summarize leftist thought. Each individual thinks of themselves as indeed the only. The only what? Well, just the only. And then, of course, the other hallmark of leftist thought, especially when it comes to academics, is that these thoughts are communicated in the wordiest, clunkiest, least eloquent, most awkward way possible. Hence the phrase, traversing spaces. Dr. Esquivel, PhD, doesn't simply walk across a room. She traverses a space. So if you're sitting across the table from her at a dinner table, she won't ask you to pass the salt. She'll beseech you to convey the sodium chloride from its current position to an approximate location nearer to where she is physically located in space. And you must heed her request immediately, given that she is, after all, the only, the one and only. Anyway, the one and only Dr. Esquivel, PhD, makes it into the cancellation today because of her recent TED Talk focused on what she calls the queer universe. Dr. Esquivel, PhD, has apparently noticed that her far-left comrades are having a very difficult time using biological science to formulate a coherent defense of queer theory and gender ideology. So she proposes that they abandon that pursuit and instead seek validation and vindication in the field of quantum physics. If gender ideology appears to make no sense from a biological perspective, maybe she can make sense of it from a physics perspective. And if she can't make sense of it, at least she hopes she can confuse people enough to fool them into believing that she made sense of it. That seems to be the goal of this talk, titled The Queer Universe, a Quantum Explanation. So let's watch as much of it as we can bear.
Queer. Differing in some way from what is usual or normal. As a society, we tend to think in absolutes. Black or white, gay or straight, male or female. But what if I were to tell you that the universe is non-binary? That from cosmological scales to subatomic scales, that the universe is actually super queer. So it isn't such a crazy leap to assume that everything inside our universe is also queer. Does that make you uncomfortable? Or are you cautiously optimistic that the universe may offer some comfort? My name is Dr. Jessica Esquivel. I'm a Black, Mexican, queer, neurodivergent woman. I'm also a particle physicist. And today, leveraging my expertise on the intricacies of the quantum realm, we are going to create a reimagining of our universe.
Now, I have to say that if nothing else, I appreciate the visuals here. A blue-haired woke physicist blabbering about the queer universe to an empty stadium while a small group of people walk around behind her, completely ignoring her. She did say she's the only, after all. In this case, she's the only one who attended her own lecture. Notice also how she is ostensibly preparing to give a talk about science, and yet, while listing her credentials, her status as a physicist is listed last after woman, Black, Mexican, queer, and neurodivergent. But if she has any legitimate scientific insights to offer, why does it matter which alleged marginalized victim group she belongs to? What relevance does that have? It's hard to imagine a legitimate physicist beginning a speech by announcing his sexual orientation. Like, I wasn't around to hear it myself, but I'm going to guess that Albert Einstein never opened a lecture by saying, "My name is Albert Einstein. I'm a white, cisgender, heterosexual, neurodivergent, German-born theoretical physicist." That's because Einstein had brilliant ideas, and he was interested in letting his ideas stand or fall on their own merits. Dr. Esquivel, PhD, on the other hand, needs to prop up her ideas on the crutch of victimhood. Let's keep listening.
Everything around us, everything from the galaxies filled with stars, to the extraordinary depths of our oceans filled with creatures beyond our wildest dreams, are made up of a fundamental set of particles. These teensy tiny particles live and interact in a world unlike our own. In our macro world, we tend to think binary categorizations and absolutes are the norm. But if we tunnel down into the smallest spaces of our universe, we enter a world where queerness and chaos reign supreme.
On the contrary, Dr. Esquivel, PhD, you don't need to go down to the bottom of the ocean or look under a microscope to see a world where queerness and chaos reign supreme. That's actually a good description of our culture. Queerness and chaos reign supreme. And yet, if she's right that queerness reigns supreme at the most basic level of reality, if indeed the universe is queer, as she says, then doesn't that mean that queerness doesn't exist? If queer means abnormal, and yet the abnormal is normal, then there is no abnormal. If the universe is queer, then nothing is queer. In order for a thing to be abnormal, it must, as she says at the beginning, differ from what is normal, which means that there has to be a normal for the abnormal thing to differ from. Well, established titles is your opportunity to earn the title of Lord or Lady and gain the respect that you so richly deserve. All you need is a 1 square foot plot of land in Scotland, and when you do that, you get your title pack, where you will be bestowed with at least 1 square foot of dedicated land on a private estate in Edelston, Scotland, plus an official certificate, which I have in my hand, that has a special crest, as you can see. Your certificate features a unique plot number with which you can see the exact location of your land. You can even visit it, I think. Don't quote me on that. It's only a square foot, so I don't know what you do. You can just stand there, I guess. Title packs from Established Titles are a fun and unique gift for any occasion. There are even couple packs that come with adjoining plots of land for that special someone in your life. With your certificate, you could officially add the prefix of Lord or Lady to your credit cards, plane tickets, and even your dating profile. Established Titles told me that the first 200 people to purchase the title pack using my exclusive link will receive a plot within walking distance of mine. Depending on how many of you want to become a Lord or Lady, we can begin to build our own kingdom together. Established Titles is actually running a massive Black Friday sale right now. And if you use the code Walsh at checkout, you'll get an additional 10% off. So go to establishedtitles.com/Walsh to get your gifts now and help support the channel. So as always, they want to have their queer cake and eat it too. She wants to proudly announce herself as queer, taking pride in her own abnormality, and yet in the next breath insist that she is not abnormal at all because in fact everything is queer, everything is gay, everything is non-binary. Even the atoms are gay. Our entire universe is comprised of gay particles, she says. Now, this is obviously totally inane, pseudoscientific, new age babble, but it's also self-contradictory. Ever since the days of Alfred Kinsey, the priests and priestesses of the sexual revolution have tried desperately to convince us that their lifestyle choices and sexual quirks are actually normal, and yet at the same time, they also want to cling to their victimhood card and their identity as a supposedly oppressed minority. So they want to be a minority and the majority at the same time. Now, I won't inflict much more of this on you, but let's hear how she wraps all of this up.
All matter is a peculiar conundrum that we don't quite understand. Even confounding still. Even though all matter in the universe, including atoms, molecules, humans, plants, planets, galaxies, oceans, all of that only consists of 5% of the visible matter that we can see in our universe. 5%. So the rest of it is dark energy and dark matter, and that's another confounding topic for another talk. But all this to say that it is an existential fact that we are anomalies in our universe. And the most existential question at the heart of my research is not if we are queer, but why we are queer. And I wonder if we were to let the chaos of quantum mechanics infiltrate our thinking, if we were to let go of those rigid processes we have and become one with the queer universe, I wonder, maybe, possibly, scientific discoveries would become easier.
You know, this woman spent like 6 years in college, came out with a doctorate, and all of that just so that she could tell us to become one with the queer universe. I could not possibly think of a better argument against student loan forgiveness than that. Now, has she achieved her aim with this lecture? Well, if her aim was to somehow prove that non-binary and transgender identities are valid by prattling on about queer subatomic particles, then no, she has not. The fact that particles behave strangely and unexpectedly does not legitimize the illogical and biologically impossible self-perceptions of human beings. Subatomic particles can do lots of things that entire human beings cannot do. They can pass through solid objects, for instance. Dr. Esquivel, PhD, is here taking a common leftist tactic to extraordinary and extraordinarily stupid lengths, where, you know, they often attempt to prove that a person's self-identity and their self-identity claim is legitimate by drawing a comparison to a phenomenon that occurs outside of the human species. So just last week, we heard from someone who attempted to prove that the sex binary among human beings is false by pointing to the fact that some organisms, like amoebas, exist outside of the sex binary. Like amoebas are asexual. They reproduce asexually. That's supposed to prove something about, that's supposed to validate, amoebas validate a claim that a man in a dress is making about himself. No, because human beings are not amoebas. And though human beings are comprised of like zillions of subatomic particles, a human being is not a subatomic particle individually. But there's a more important point to be made here, I think, which is to note how small and diminished everything becomes when it's filtered through queer theory or gender ideology or whatever you want to call it. I mean, physics is a fascinating field. I don't understand any of it, but I do know that it can unlock and has unlocked some of the deepest mysteries of the universe. The more you understand physics, the more you understand the nature of the world, of the cosmos, of reality. And yet this woman, being an adherent to the LGBT religion, isn't interested in the secrets of the universe. The only universe she cares about is the universe of her own small, fragile ego. So rather than taking the tool of physics and directing it out into the world to understand and explore, she points it back at herself to obsess over and justify her own personal and sexual preoccupations. The result is the nonsense you just heard, but worse than being merely nonsense, it's also boring and uninteresting and dull and irrelevant. I suspect there's probably a fair amount of nonsense offered by theoretical physicists, but at least the nonsense is usually fascinating and directed towards the pursuit of something greater, something noble, understanding the universe. This woman's nonsense, on the other hand, is the result of trying to jam physics into a space under the umbrella of queer theory. She's trying to subordinate it, bring it to heel, fit it into a hierarchy where LGBT self-interest stands at the very top. And this is what happens more and more as institutions and scientific fields are ideologically captured by the far left. They end up churning out a whole bunch of bogus garbage, and worse than that, they stop pursuing truth. They stop looking for it because they're too busy looking in the mirror, talking to themselves. And that is why Dr. Esquivel, PhD, is today canceled. That'll do it for this portion of the show as we move over to the members block. Hope to see you there. If not, talk to you tomorrow. Godspeed.